All right, well, today's video is going to be on a series of modern mechanics articles from August of 1933. Now, one of them actually briefly mentions Dr. William S. Sadler and, of course, what he was doing at the time, but it's only a brief section of these articles. And I think it's really important when it comes to us discussing what you're about to see today of the culture of the time, which might or might not have influenced the Urantia Book. So hopefully you can sit back, relax. I'll read most of the narratives to you, even the captions as well, associated with what I think is brilliant illustrations. I really did enjoy them. So let's get started. All right, everyone. So we're currently looking at the August 1933 edition of Modern Mechanics. So I understand that this first page here has nothing to do with Dr. William Sadler. I think since I purchased these pages, we might as well show viewers today what spiritual thinking and science was like back in the 30s when a lot of the Urantia Book was being constructed. So with that said, we'll start with this article, which is Braving the Inferno of a Volcano. All right, let me just zoom in at the top here. All right, I'm going to try to make it nice and big so everybody can actually view it on their screens, and it'll be an easy read-along, hopefully. So just trying to figure out when it comes to editing how big I should make this. This is probably big enough. All right. So again, the title of the article is Braving the Inferno of a Volcano. Amazing plan to descend flaming crater hanging in cage from a derrick. And derrick, believe it or not, I believe is a term that was actually used in the Urantia Book. It's actually what fell on Joseph, Jesus' father, and which unfortunately took his life. So interesting how that's actually mentioned here. So let's talk about the photo, right? Above photo shows scientists lowering a crate of guinea pigs into a volcano near Tokyo to test deadliness of fumes. Lowered to a depth of 1,000 feet in the boiling, fume-filled crater of Mount Mahara near Tokyo, Japan, scientists who are now carrying out an amazing program of volcanic investigations will hang in a tiny metal cage over a bubbling flood of molten lava, suspended only by a thin steel cable. Details of the device are given in the accompanying drawing. A live monkey, guinea pigs, and rabbits were used in testing the toxicity of the volcano's gases. Mount Mahara is a favorable spot for suicides, 50 people having leapt to their death since January 1st. All right, and of course, this was a time where animal testing was more widely accepted. And of course, there were animal rights activists, well, at least not to the degree that we have them today in all these organizations. But look at the artistry. I mean, that's one of the things I love about these periodicals, right? Especially back then. Just the amount of detail that went into some of these drawings. At least to me, kind of feels steampunkish, right? And for those of you that know me pretty well, that's the design I like to follow through with when it comes to making my lamps in my office. All right, so they have quartz windows and asbestos-lined metal cage. That's great. With their oxygen supply being on the side here. And, of course, got the poor monkey. So let's talk about the cage first, just because we're just, talking about what it was lined with. In a cage of metal lined with asbestos with quartz windows which resist heat, scientists will make observations inside the crater of Mount Mahara near Tokyo, Japan. A derrick will be used to raise and lower the cage. A supply of oxygen is carried in containers, enabling the men in the cage to stay down for long periods. Communication with the derrick operator is maintained by telephone. All right, and you got the poor monkey here, the poor thing. Encircle. This monkey was lowered into crater to test effective fumes on man. Although overcome when removed, as shown in the picture, he speedily recovered, and scientists decided that with proper protection, men could descend into the crater with impunity. All right, the next page says, Secrets of Cures by... All right, and of course, we don't have these articles side by side, right? So I'm not really sure how these articles were presented back in the day. Yeah, and what's interesting, I mean, I believe to the left is zodiac signs. Not sure what's going on here, if the guy's opening up his guts or what's going on. Very confusing. But to the right here, I don't think the watermen is a zodiac sign. But again, I know very little about astrology, so if anybody could fill me in as to what the waterman is, that's very interesting. Or the fishes. I've never heard fishes being used before, so I want to say some of these look like zodiac signs, and other ones, not really sure what's going on here. All right, so let's read the caption underneath with, continuing to have the image on top. The ancients believed that the stars determine the course of human affairs. Astrologers consulted the zodiac, shown above, to learn when it was safe to bathe, get a haircut, and take medical treatment, and so forth. Apparently, the article was by Earl R. Buell. And then over here it says, Shrine at, hopefully I'm saying this correctly, Lourdes, France, showing crutches discarded by afflicted persons, cured by faith. And this is where we start getting into Dr. William Sadler's material here. So right here it says high blood pressure type, and if you can't read on the screen what it's saying, it's showing a blood pressure of about 180. I think that's probably the top number, right? When it comes to blood pressure. If someone had a bottom number, diastolic pressure of that degree, yeah, good luck. That would be very unhealthy, and you have to be in a hospital currently. All right, it says worry, despondency, grief, pessimism are fatal to health. These emotions cause high blood pressure. Victim may seek relief from nervous tension and drink, which leads to weakness of heart and early death. Which, of course, I wouldn't say is too far off given the times. And, of course, the loose association that we know that, people that are depressed seek depressants, which is alcohol. All right, try not to hit the zoom button right now. But in the image, it says John Doe died, whatever, I can't see what the small word is here, but at age 45. And, of course, the image is showing a chain here that ties in an individual when they're younger, right? Probably at work, at their desk. And, of course, they corded telephone. And the chain leads to the person going to the bar quite a few times throughout their lifetime, becoming old and decrepit, right? Obviously, it has back problems and a cane, and then leading to death, which, of course, nobody looks as bad at age 45. Or at least I like to think that. All right, so it says, cheer up, have faith. It's good for your health. That's the verdict of scientists who have been experimenting to determine effectiveness of remedies employed by ancient medicine men, astrologers, and modern faith healers. This article explains why some people actually do get well when they have a strong belief that they are going to get well, which, of course, that placebo effect, right? That has a huge effect not only when it comes to positive expectancy, but also on medications too, which is why we have placebo groups. All right, and it says here, optimism is better than apples for keeping the doctor away. There is a scientific basis for faith healing. Even some ancient superstitions had healing power, and the hocus pocus of the tribal medicine man may have saved many lives. These are some of the conclusions arrived at by a group of experimenters who have been endeavoring to test out the effect of states of mind upon the general health. Applying the scientific methods of a clinic and the laboratory to their work, the investigators at first set out to find out which, if any, of the healing systems widely practiced by various cults could be shown to have any therapeutic value. Very much to their amazement, they found evidence that not only these cults, but any religion devoutly accepted by the individual had certain definitely traceable physical effects of a beneficial nature. The discoveries went even further, indicating that any optimistic or inspiring thought was valuable for healing, and that some miraculous appearing cures had actually been affected by the reassuring words of a doctor in whom the patient had confidence, without any treatment at all. On the other hand, it was found that a long list of emotions related to fear, an exactly opposite effect, had that to embrace a philosophy of pessimism, was about on a par with warming an asp in the bosom. I have no clue what that means. I'm going to have to look it up. Okay, and this part says ancient medicine man. Once more, I think these two pages kind of went side by side. So, when it comes to post-editing, I'll try to put on the screen what the actual title is for this article. I do think it's two in the same, but again, these are all piecemealed, mailed to me. So I only got individual pages when it came to how at least I received them. All right, so I'm sure they're going to explain the image. Right now, I'm not really sure what's going on. A bunch of hooded figures. Looks like it's supposed to be a photo. All right, so the caption, at least over here, for this devil-looking figure says that while mystic hocus pocus of an ancient medicine man was scientifically impractical, it actually cured some sufferers who strongly believed they were going to get well. And again, that's part of that positive expectancy. And as a friendly reminder to viewers too, I mean, we keep talking about placebo, but sometimes, having a negative expectancy can lead to a nocebo effect. Again, it's called a nocebo. Something that typically isn't discussed in media, but most certainly is a thing. Goes both ways. All right. So this one says worship. All right. So this is probably the caption for this image on the top. It says worshipers praying at a grave of a priest for deliverance from physical ailments. Belief in potency of prayer frequently results in cure. Experimenters have found. All right. So there you go. And this one says normal blood pressure type. And now it's actually saying normal blood pressure is supposed to be at 150. Yeah, I don't think that's normal blood pressure, right? I think, what are the new numbers? Is it like 130/80? Again, I'll try to put the numbers on the screen when it comes to me researching all this later on, post-edit. So it says here, optimism, faith, cheerfulness tend to keep blood pressure normal, resulting generally in long life and vigorous old age. No strain is put upon heart, so that it remains sound throughout life. Religious faith thus has a scientific justification. All right, so these images show a person, I'm assuming, that is conversing with another man. That's chained to him golfing and being active, to obviously him being wealthy and affluent and successful later on in his years. Obviously, this person has a cane, but no back problems. So the cane is probably just a sign of status. All right, well, let's get started when it comes to the article. And I'm assuming it's left to right here. So let's scroll down and start reading. Instead of being able to find out which sect was nearest to the truth, as had been intended, experimenters found that truth or falsity of a sincere belief seemed to make no appreciable difference in its curative effect. This gave rise to the realization that countless supposedly silly superstitions had probably improved the health of those who believed in them. As a result, there arises the possibility of testing the sincerity of religious convictions by means of the blood pressure gauge and other instruments. And while it is not suggested that these instruments will be installed at the church altars, there is said to be ample evidence that positive results could be obtained by this means. The findings of the experimenters have dovetailed to a large extent with those of Dr. William S. Sadler of Chicago University. Although the experimenters were without a knowledge of Dr. Sadler's works, and they are taken to be mutually corroborative. They are said also to be in line with the prophecy of Dr. Charles P. Steinmetz, famous physicist who shortly before his death predicted that science in the near future would turn to spiritual matters, and that developments in this field would be similar to those in the physical and material realm. One of the more remarkable discoveries recently made is that there is apparently a scientific basis for the healing principles of faith, hope, and charity, or love, as described in the Bible. And it is indicated that any inspiring writings and the encouraging or uplifting words of any admired or revered speaker may be sufficient to effect rather startling cures in some instances. The time may very well come when your doctor's prescription will read, "See your priest, minister, or other religious advisor." Public intuition has for some time been directing large numbers of persons back to their churches for physical as well as mental and spiritual assistance. It is said, and a period of increased interest in the church is prophesied. Beginning first with a study of religious... All right, I'm going to read the title first, and I'm going to work our way down to continue the article, right? At the top, it reads, "Religious emotions carry Gandhi safely through fast of 3 weeks." All right. Looks like we have a person on the fulcrum, sitting on a table, strapped down. I guess he's sleeping. It says subject working probe, lems and mental arithmetic. Okay. And then down here, same thing, although he's a little bit more balanced now. And it says down here, subject thinking intently of feet. And then it says down here, the power of mind to control body is demonstrated in this experiment. Mental work drives blood to head, weighting down upper end. Thinking of feet reverses the process. All right, it says above left. All right, which is, again, I can't do both at the same time, unfortunately, when it comes to the image. And, of course, Gandhi. The Gandhi narrative here. Above left, Mahatma Gandhi, whose faith and religious zeal carried him safely through 3 weeks fast, despite warnings that he could not survive. How you would look after going without eats for 40 days. Fasting experiment was undertaken by Battle Creek, Michigan. Man to prove that 40 days of abstinence from eating is beneficial to the body. Oh, that's horrible. First day, 154 pounds. 28th day, 135 pounds. 40th day, 114 pounds. All right, so this looks like an image to the left of a haunted house, I think. Graveyard. I guess he's got a crush on a girl. And then apparently this kid's startled and I'm assuming that's a BB gun. Maybe it's not a kid. Who knows? When it comes to the image, little narration here, it indicates conclusive proof that the mind affects the heart is given in situations illustrated here. Fright, love, superstitious fear speed up the pulse, putting heavy strain on the heart. And of course, that's as well true, especially what we know of glucocorticoids or stress hormones. All right, continuing the article from the previous page, it indicates healing and recognizing the fact that savage races since the beginning of history have looked to their medicine men, both for religious guidance and physical healing. Experimenters have followed the course of healing through the story of many religious sects to the present day. They found that belief in faith healing or prayer cures had never died out, though it had often fallen into disrepute. In studying the superstitions of other days, they found many that dealt with healing and came to the conclusion that even the most ridiculous might affect cures if completely accepted by the patient. That some of these must, however, have severely taxed the credulity of the individual is indicated by some of the superstitions studied. A cure for warts and corns was found which required the patient to lie on his back along a boundary line on the 20th day of the month with the hands extended over the head, with whatever thing could be grasped while so doing. He was to rub the warts and they would immediately disappear. Which, again, you know, I don't know any research studies associated with any of this so far, but I will say that there is an additional healing effect if you can visualize yourself actually repairing your own tissue. That typically bolsters your immune system. So I've seen those research studies, but yeah, this is really interesting. Now, obviously, this is probably exaggerated, but there is some truth to these articles. Corns were to be cured by watching for a shooting star, and on seeing one, immediately pouring vinegar upon the hinge of a door. For headache, the patient was instructed, in one instance, to tie about the forehead a piece of rope used previously for the hanging of a criminal. That's extreme. The eye of a wolf rubbed upon a diseased, and of course this is continued on to page 13. All right, so this says obviously the continuing article of the Secrets of Ancient Medicine Man, right? And we'll continue obviously narrating what's written here, and then we'll go on to some of the advertisements, right? Which I just think are cool, right? It's one of the reasons why I'm sure you're watching, to see what the culture was like back then. Human eye was one of the superstitious cures for eye trouble. A prescription for stomach ache called for the removal of the heart of a living lark, and it's being worn on the left thigh. Epileptics were instructed to gather peonies at night when the moon was on the wane, and wrapping them in linen to wear them as an amulet. A nail from a cross removed and suspended about the neck was another prescription for the epileptic. Since some forms of epilepsy have been listed as highly curable under the new system, it is pointed out that this superstition may have produced many actual cures in spite of the ridiculous nature of the instructions. A difficulty encountered is the fact that practically all minor ailments, most physical injuries, and a considerable number of serious physical disorders generally end in recovery of the patient. It was this fact that convinced the savage that his medicine man had supernatural powers, and it still operates to convince the followers of modern cults and miraculous cures. Experimenters delving into the subject, taking account of the fact that most persons recovered from their ills in time, set out to learn whether the followers of healing cults recovered more rapidly than the non-believers, and their experiments are said to have borne out of the belief that they do. To discover the reason for this, a study of general physical effects traceable to purely mental or spiritual causes was undertaken. It was noted at once that fright quickened the heartbeat, that worry upset the digestion, which of course we know from those stress hormones, again, especially cortisol and that shutting down aspects of your gut. That envy, jealousy, and hatred affected nerves, glands, and blood vessels. This indicated that there were certain emotions that could be tabulated as harmful. Among these were pessimism, dissatisfaction, grief, alarm, timidity, anxiety, despondency, suspicion, hatred, worry, cowardice, anger, moroseness, remorse, vacillation, selfishness, envy, and jealousy. These, upon analysis, were found to be merely different forms of fear, selfishness, or discouragement. For a working hypothesis, it was considered that these harmful emotions generated through the glands, bloodstream, or other physical agencies of the body a sort of poison, which caused illness or a predisposition to illness. Leaving to the doctors the problem of finding an antidote for the poisons. An effort was made to find antidotes for the harmful emotions, and this proved easier. The beneficent emotions were soon listed to include optimism, satisfaction, happiness, confidence, assurance, trustfulness, hopefulness, certainty, love, cheerfulness, courage, patience, enthusiasm, conscientiousness, determination, and the like. And it's funny, this is for another video, but Dr. Martin Seligman did a lot of work when it came to these areas. In the text, The Character, Strengths, and Virtues, where Dr. Seligman and Christopher Peterson actually travel the world understanding different cultural determinations associated with positive psychology. And of course, psychological resiliency. So believe it or not, this article from the 30s was most certainly onto something, right? But a lot of it was kind of inflated, and this is way before we definitely had all the testing, everything else to understand the physiological response to stress and spirituality and everything else. But honestly, this article was ahead of its time. To build up faith or trust, to inspire hope, to inculcate charity or love as an antidote to selfishness and envy, it was found necessary to bring the patient some authority of a philosophical or religious nature. In general, religion was believed to be the most powerful agent, although anything of an inspirational nature was found valuable. And down here it says, thank you for mentioning modern mechanics and inventions for August when writing to advertisers. Now this is cute right here. The Starling Detective Adventures, right? Start Detroit's unholy alliance of snatchers, a colorful fact story of the most outrageous gang of kidnappers in the history of the nation, packed with thrills and fully illustrated. This powerful tale begins in the August issue. Also, read The Ransom of Peggy McMath. An astounding, detailed, and generously pictured account of Cape Cod's blackface abductor and the courageous little girl who kept her nerve through a horrible experience. This and other outstanding stories graphically told. Boy, that takes us back, especially mentioning blackface, right? And all the negative connotations that's associated with. All True Cases, August issue, now on sale for 15 cents. If your news dealer is sold out, send 15-cent stamps or coin to Starling Detective Adventures. 529 South 7th Street, Minneapolis, Minnesota. And your copy of the August issue will be mailed direct. All right, and I'm not going to read the entire page here of advertisements, but I will just read the headlines for everybody. This is a solar telescope for $1.25, nearly 3 feet long. Make your own radio. 250 magic tricks. Silent Defender. Boy Electrician. Surprise matches. Apparently, they look like your ordinary matches. They get quite a surprise when they try to light them. Kind of looks like one of those bang sticks. A midget Bible. Of course, we don't use that term anymore. Serpent's eggs. Star Toy Maker. Looks like a compass here for 35 cents. Stage money. Magnets, of course. This pistol cigarette case is probably worth money these days, huh? 35 cents. Nose flute. That's cute. I really hope this is an X-ray tube, but apparently there's one here. Tell your fortune with some type of dream book. Learn to hypnotize. All right. Fortune telling by cards. So this must be like a tarot thing. All right. Well, thank you for watching today's video, your continued support, and I'll see you on the next one.
Change Talk LLC.